Chapter 11. Quidditch. As they entered November, the weather turned very cold. The mountains around the school became icy gray and the lake like chilled steel. Every morning the ground was covered in frost. Hagrid could be seen from the upstairs windows defrosting broomsticks on the Quidditch field, bundled up in his long moleskin overcoat, rabbit fur gloves, and enormous beaverskin boots. The Quidditch season had begun. On Saturday, Harry would be playing his first Quidditch match after weeks of training. Gryffindor versus Slytherin. If Gryffindor won, they would move up into second place in the house championship. Hardly anyone had seen Harry play because Wood had decided that, as their secret weapon, Harry should be kept, well, secret. But the news that he was playing secret had leaked out somehow. Harry didn't know which was worse. People telling him he'd be brilliant, or people telling him that they'd be running underneath holding a mattress. It was really lucky that Harry had Hermione as a friend. He didn't know how he would have gotten through all his homework without her. What, with all the last-minute Quidditch practice Wood was making him do. She had also lent him Quidditch Throughout the Ages, which turned out to be a very interesting read. Harry learned that there were 700 ways of committing a Quidditch foul, and that all of them happened during the World Cup of 1473. That seekers were usually the smallest, fastest players, and that most serious Quidditch accidents seemed to happen to them. That, although people rarely died from playing Quidditch, referees had been known to vanish and turn up months later in the Sahara Desert. Hermione had become a bit more relaxed about breaking rules since Harry and Ron saved her from the mountain troll, and she was much nicer for it. The day before Harry's first Quidditch match, the three of them were out in the freezing courtyard during break, and she had conjured them up a bright blue fire that could be carried around in a jam jar. They were standing with their backs to it, getting warm, when Snape across the yard. Harry noticed at once that Snape was limping. Harry, Ron, and Hermione moved closer together to block the fire from view. They were sure it wasn't allowed. Unfortunately, something about their guilty faces caught Snape's eye. He limped over. He hadn't seen the fire, but he'd seemed to be looking for another reason to tell them off anyway. "What's that you've got there, Potter?" It was Quidditch Throughout the Ages. Harry showed him. "Library books are not to be taken outside the school," said Snape. "Give it to me. 5 points from Gryffindor." "He's just made up that rule," Harry muttered angrily as Snape limped away. "I wonder what's wrong with his leg." "Dunno, but I hope it's really hurting him," said Ron bitterly. The Gryffindor common room was very noisy that evening. Harry, Ron, and Hermione sat together next to the window. Hermione was checking Harry and Ron's charm homework for them. She would never let them copy How Will You Learn, but by asking her to read it, they got the right answers anyway. Harry felt restless. He wanted Quidditch Throughout the Ages back, to take his mind off the nerves for tomorrow. Why should he be afraid of Snape? Getting up, he told Ron and Hermione he was going to ask Snape for it back. "Better you than me," they said together. But Harry had an idea that Snape wouldn't refuse if there was another teacher listening. He made his way down to the staff room and knocked. There was no answer. He knocked again. Nothing. Perhaps Snape had left the book in there. It was worth a try. He pushed the door ajar and peered inside. What a horrible scene met his eyes. Snape and Filch were inside alone. Snape was holding his robes above his knees with one leg that was bloodied and mangled. Filch was there handing Snape bandages. "Blastered things," Snape said. "How are you supposed to keep your eye on all those heads at once?" Harry tried to shut the door quietly, but "Potter!" Snape's face was twisted with fury as he dropped his robes quickly to hide his leg. Harry gulped. "I wondered if I could get my book back." "Get out! Out!" Harry left before Snape could take any more points from Gryffindor. He sprinted back upstairs. "Did you get it?" Ron asked Harry as they joined him. "What's the matter?" In a low whisper, Harry told them what he had seen. "You know what this means," he finished breathlessly. "He tried to get past the three-headed dog that Halloween. That's where he was going when we saw him. He's after whatever it's guarding. And I'd bet my broomstick he let that troll in to make a diversion. Hermione's eyes were wide. No, he wouldn't, she said. I know he's not very nice, but he wouldn't try to steal something Dumbledore was keeping safe. Honestly, Hermione, do you think all teachers are saints for something? Snapped Ron. I'm with Harry. I wouldn't put past anything past Snape. But what's he after? What's that dog guarding? Harry went to bed with his head buzzing with the same question. Neville was snoring loudly, but Harry couldn't sleep. He tried to empty his mind. He needed to sleep. He had to. He had his first Quidditch match in just a few hours, but the expression on Snape's face when Harry had seen his leg wasn't easy to forget. The next morning dawned, very bright and cold. The great hall was full of delicious smells and fried sausages that made a cheerful chatter of everyone looking forward to the good Quidditch match. You've got to eat something for breakfast. I don't want anything. Just a bit of toast, whined Hermione. I'm not hungry. Harry felt terrible. In an hour's time, he'd be walking onto the field. Harry, you need your strength, said Seamus Finnegan. Seekers are always the one who get clobbered by the other team. Thanks, Seamus, said Harry, watching Seamus pile up ketchup onto his sausages. By 11 o'clock, the whole school seemed to be out in the stands around the Quidditch pitch. Many students had binoculars. The seats might have been raised high in the air, but it was still very difficult to see what was going on sometimes. Ron and Hermione joined Neville, Seamus, and the Dean of the West End Femme on the top row. As a surprise for Harry, they had been painting a large banner on one of the sheets that Scabbers had ruined. It said, Potter for President, and Dean, who was good at drawing, had done a large Gryffindor lion underneath. Then, Hermione had performed a tricky little charm so that the paint flashed different colors. Meanwhile, in the locker room, Harry and the rest of the team were changing into their scarlet Quidditch robes. Slytherin was to be played in green. Wood cleared his throat for silence. Okay, men, he said. And woman, said Chaser Angelina Johnson. And woman, Wood agreed. This is it. The big one, said Fred Weasley. The one we've been waiting for, said George. We know Oliver's speech by heart, Fred told Harry. We were on the team last year. Shut up, you two, said Wood. This is the best team Gryffindor's had in years. We're gonna win. I know it. He glared at all of them, as if to say, or else. Right. It's time. Good luck, all of you. Harry followed Fred and George out of the locker room, hoping his knees weren't going to give away. He walked onto the field to loud cheers. Madame Hooch was refereeing. She stood in the middle of the field waiting for the two teams, her broom in her hand. Now, I want a nice fair game, all of you, she said, once they were gathered around her. Harry noticed that she seemed to be speaking particularly to the Slytherin captain, Marcus Flint, a fifth year. Harry thought Flint looked as if someone had troll blood in him. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a fluttering banner high above, flashing Potter for President over the crowd. His heart skipped. He felt braver. Mount your brooms, please. Harry climbed onto the Nimbus 2000. Madame Hooch gave a loud blast on her silver whistle. 15 brooms rose up, high into the air. They were off. And the quaffle has been taken immediately by Angelina Johnson of Gryffindor. What an excellent chaser that girl is. And rather attractive, too. Jordan! Sorry, Professor. The Weasley's twin friend, Lee Jordan, was doing the commentary for the match, closely watched by Professor McGonagall. And she's really belting along up there. A neat pass to Alyssa Spinnet. A good find by Oliver Woods. Last year, only reserve. Back to Johnson. And no, the Slytherins have taken the quaffle. Slytherin Captain Marcus Flint gains the quaffle. And off he goes, Flint flying up like an eagle. Up there, he's gonna No! Stop by the excellent move by Gryffindor Keeper Wood, and Gryffindors take the quaffle. That's Chaser, Katie Bell of Gryffindor. Out there. Nice dive, Flint. Up on the field and... Ouch! That must have hurt. Hit the back of the head by the bludger. Quaffle taken by the Slytherins. That's Adrian speeding off to the goalposts, but he was blocked by the second bludger. Sent his way by Fred and George Weasley. Can't tell which. Nice play by the Gryffindor beater. Anyways, Johnson's back into the position to the quaffle. A clear field ahead. Off she goes. She's really flying. Dodges a speeding bludger. The goalposts are ahead. Come on now, Angelina. Keeper Bledgley dives. Misses. Gryffindor scores. Gryffindor cheers filled the cold air with howls and moans from Slytherin. Bludge up there. Keep moving along. Hagrid! Ron and Hermione squeezed together to give Hagrid enough space to join them. Been watching from the hut, said Hagrid, patting a large pair of binoculars around his neck. But it wasn't the same as being in the crowd. No sign of the snitch yet, eh? Nope, said Ron. Harry hasn't had much to do yet. Kept out of trouble, though. That's something, said Hagrid, raising his binoculars and peered towards the skies at the speck that was Harry. Way up above them, Harry was gliding over the game, squinting about for some sign of the snitch. This was the part of his and Wood's game plan. Keep an eye out until you catch sign of the snitch, Wood said. We don't want you to get attacked before you have to be. When Angelina had scored, Harry had done a couple of loop-de-loops to set off his feelings. Now, he was back to staring for the snitch. Once he caught sight of a flash of gold, but it was just a reflection of one of the Weasleys' wristwatches, and one of the bludgers decided to take some pelting his way, more like a cannonball if anything, but Harry dodged it, and Fred Weasley came chasing after it. All right there, Harry, he had time to yell as he beat the bludger fiercely towards Marcus Flint. Slytherins in position, Lee Jordan said. Chaser ducks 2 bludges, 2 Weasleys, and a chaser ball, which speeds towards the... Wait a moment. Was that the snitch? A murmur ran through the crowd as Adrian dropped the quaffle, too busy looking over his shoulder at the flashes of gold that passed his left ear. Harry saw it. In great rush of excitement, he dived downwards after it. Slytherin Seeker, Trency Higgs, had seen it too. Neck and neck, they hurtled towards the snitch. All the chasers seemed to have forgotten what they were supposed to be doing as they hung midair to watch. Harry was faster than Higgs. He could see that little round ball as the wings fluttered, darting up, ahead. He had put extra spurt of speed. Wham! A roar of rage echoed from the Gryffindors below. Marcus Flint had blocked Harry on purpose, and Harry's broom spun off course. Harry was holding on for dear life. Foul! Screamed the Gryffindors. Madame Hooch spoke angrily to Flint in order to free shot at the goalpost for Gryffindor. But in all the confusion of the course, the golden snitch has disappeared from sight. Down in the crowd, Dean Thomas was yelling, Send him off, ref! Red card! What are you talking about, Dean? Said Ron. Red card! Said Dean furiously. In soccer, you get thrown the red card, you're out of the game. This isn't soccer, Dean, reminded Ron. Hagrid, however, was on Dean's side. They ought to change the rules. Flynn could have knocked Harry out of the air. Lee Jordan was finding it not difficult to take sides. So, after that obvious and disgusting bit of cheating, Jordan, growled Professor McGonagall. I mean, after that open of a revolting foul, Jordan, I'm warning you. All right. Flint nearly kills Gryffindor Seeker, which could happen to anyone, I'm sure. So, a plenty to Gryffindor, taken by Spinnet, who puts it away, no trouble, and we can continue to play. Gryffindor, still in possession. It was as Harry dodged another bludger, which was spinning dangerously close past his head, that it happened. His broom gave a sudden, frightening lurch. For a split second, he thought that he was going to fall, gripping to the broom tightly with both hands and knees. He never felt anything like that. It happened again. It was the broom, trying to buck him off. But Nimbus 2000s did not suddenly decide to buck off their riders. Harry tried to turn it towards the Gryffindor goalposts, but he had half a mind to ask Wood to call time out. And then he realized that his broom was completely out of control. He couldn't turn it. He couldn't direct it at all. It was zigzagging through the air, violently making swishing movements, almost to unseat him. Lee was still commenting. Slytherin, in position, Flint, with the quaffle, passes to Spinet, passes Bell, hit hard in the face by a bludger. Hope it broke his nose. Only joking, Professor. Slytherin scores! Oh, no. The Slytherins were cheering. No one seemed to have noticed that Harry's broom was behaving strangely. It was carrying him slowly higher, away from the game, jerking and twitching as it went. Don't know what Harry thinks he's doing, Hagrid mumbled. He stared through his binoculars. If I didn't know any better, I'd say he'd lost control of his broom, but he can't have. Suddenly, people were pointing up at Harry all over the stands. His broom started to roll over with him only being able to manage to hold on. The whole crowd gasped. Harry's broom giving wild jerks as Harry swung off it. He was now dangling from it, holding on by only one hand. Did something happen when Flint blocked him? Seamus whispered. It can't have, Hagrid said, his voice shaking. Can't nothing interfere with his broomstick except powerful dark magic. No kid could do that to a Nimbus 2000. At these words, Hermione seized Hagrid's binoculars. But instead of looking up at Harry, she frantically looked through the crowd. What are you doing? Moaned Ron, gray-faced. I knew it! Hermione gasped. Snape! Look! Ron grabbed the binoculars. Snape was in the middle of the stands, opposite to him. He had his eyes fixed on Harry, muttering nonstop under his breath. He's doing something. Jinxing the broom, said Hermione. What should we do? Leave it to me. Before Ron could say another word, Hermione disappeared. Ron turned his binoculars back on Harry. His broom was vibrating so hard it was almost impossible for him to hang on much longer. The whole crowd was on its feet, watching, terrified as the Weasleys flew up trying to pull Harry safely onto one of their brooms. But it was no good. Every time they got near him, the broom would just jump higher, still. They dropped lower and circled beneath him, obviously hoping to catch him if he fell. Marcus Flint seized the quaffle and scored 5 times without anyone noticing. Come on, Hermione, Ron muttered desperately. Hermione had fought her way to the stands where Snape stood, and was now racing along the row behind him. She didn't even stop to say sorry when she knocked over Professor Quirrell head first into the front row. Reaching Snape, she crouched and pulled out her wand and whispered a few well-chosen words. Bright blue flames shot from her wand onto the hem of Snape's robes. It took perhaps 30 seconds for Snape to realize that he was on fire. A sudden yelp told her that she had done her job. Scooping the fire off of him into a little jar in her pocket, she scrambled back along the row. Snape would never know what happened. It was enough. Up in the air, Harry was suddenly able to chamber his way back onto the broom. Neville, you can look up, Ron said. Neville had been sobbing into Hagrid's jacket for the last 5 minutes. Harry was speeding towards the ground when the crowd saw him, clapping his hand over his mouth as if he was about to be sick. He hit the field on all fours, coughed, and something gold fell into his hand. I've got the snitch, he shouted, waving above his head, and the game ended in complete confusion. He didn't catch it. He nearly swallowed it. Flint was still howling 20 minutes later, but it made no difference. Harry hadn't broken any of the rules, and Lee Jordan was still happily shouting the results. Gryffindor had won by 170 points to 60. Harry heard none of this, though. He was still being made a cup of strong tea back at Hagrid's hut, with Ron and Hermione. It was Snape, Ron was explaining. Hermione and I saw him. He was cursing your broomstick, muttering, "He wouldn't take his eyes off you." Rubbish, said Hagrid, who hadn't heard a word of what was going on next to him in the stands. Why would Snape do something like that? Harry, Ron, and Hermione looked at one another, wondering what to tell him. Harry decided on the truth. "I found out something about him," he told Hagrid. "He tried to get past the three-headed dog on Halloween. It bit him. We think he's trying to steal whatever it's guarded." Hagrid dropped the teapot. "How do you know about Fluffy?" he said. "Fluffy?" "Yeah, he's mine. I bought him off a Greek chappie I met in the pub last year. I lent him to Dumbledore to guard the—" "Yes?" Harry said eagerly. "Now, don't ask me any more," said Hagrid gruffly. "That's top secret, that is." "But Snape's trying to steal it!" "Rubbish," said Hagrid again. "Snape's a Hogwarts teacher. He'd do nothing of the sort." "So why did he just try to kill Harry?" cried Hermione. The afternoon's events certainly seemed to have changed her mind about Snape. "I know a jinx when I see one. Hagrid, I've read all about them. You've got to keep eye contact. And Snape wasn't blinking at all. I saw him." "I'm telling ya, you're wrong," Hagrid did. "I don't know why Harry's broom was acting like that, but Snape wouldn't try to kill a student. Now, listen to me, all three of ya. You're meddling in things that don't concern ya. It's dangerous. You don't forget that dog. And don't forget about what it's guarding. That's between Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel." "Aha!" said Harry. "So there's someone called Nicholas Flamel involved, is there?" Hagrid looked furious with himself.